Hi, I'm Anastasia Bliss, and today we're going to talk about spiral wedging, which is the way that I wedge. Come on over here. So this is clay in its best form ever. It's been vacuum pugged, it is still in the bag, it has never been used, it shouldn't have any air bubbles at all. So what I tell my students to do, and this is my method, you might have other ways, is to cut cubes out. If you're going to make cylinders or small forms, cut a section of clay that clears a couple of inches, and it doesn't need to be wedged. So I then turn it on its side, and I put another slice in it, and there's your cube for a cylinder. It doesn't need to be wedged when it's like that, unless you find that the clay has areas that are wetter than others. And then you'll need to wedge it to make it of uniform dampness. So we'll put that away. This clay, we'll say it's already been used. I'm putting 3 pieces together. And so let's put some air bubbles in here so I can show you how to get them out. So you never would want to just pat a piece of clay together like this. You want to wedge it to get all the air bubbles out. And you may still have some, and we'll address that when we get to cylinders in our next tutorial. So with this clay, I'm going to put it on my wedging table, and I'm going to take the heels of my hands and I'm going to push slightly, and I'm going to turn, and I'm going to push, and I'm going to turn, and I'm going to repeat that until it starts to come together. You can see the pieces of clay where the lines are where I put a few pieces together. Okay, and you can see it starts to kind of look like the side of Donald Duck's head with his bill, and that's how you know you're doing it right. You don't ever want to push it too far and turn it, because then you'll just incorporate more air bubbles in it when it overlaps. So it's kind of a small motion. I'm also pushing in with the heels of my hands. So I'm pushing and turning, and you need to do it a bunch, especially if you've had something collapse and you're re-wedging it. I'm cutting this in half to see if we still have air bubbles. That's how you can check your work. And we do. Right here we've got one, and I'm sure there are more. This looks like it was part of one. So we're gonna wedge some more. When you put 2 pieces of clay together like this after you've been wedging and you check your work, you kind of smack them together, because you have less chance of incorporating more air bubbles then. So I'm going to continue wedging, pushing in with the heels of my hands and making that slight motion. And there are many ways to wedge. This is just my way of doing it. Pushing and turning. I also, if I'm working with a bigger piece of clay, I use my body weight and leverage rather than blowing out my wrists. So I kind of do a rocking motion in that case. And I keep repeating the same motion over and over and over until it feels of consistent moisture and until I believe all the air bubbles are out. I'll check my work one more time. And that looks pretty good. It looks pretty free of air bubbles. So I'll smack it back together again. Once you get a feel for this, you won't need to cut it apart anymore and check your work. You can just make the assumption that there are no air bubbles in it anymore. I'm gonna do it a few more times since I cut it in half, just to make sure. And then you pat it into a semi-ball at least. Make sure you're not folding any parts over, because that incorporates more air bubbles too. You can pat it on the table. So come watch me in my next tutorial when we're going to be throwing a cylinder. Thanks, you guys.